Okay, is this thing live? All right, cool. So, all right, let's switch rooms. So this is the first time I've actually really done this, going live on YouTube and everything. So this video is just about Saturn going through the houses, aka the areas of life. And Saturn deals with structure. It deals with your career in a lot of different ways. It deals with building the blueprint. And it also deals with boundaries and the restrictions that you put on your life. And it rules all that different stuff. Saturn, because Saturn rules the 10th and the 11th house. So Saturn ruling those houses, this archetype of Saturn gets created. So Saturn is a connector. Saturn likes to connect with people because Saturn is exalted in Libra. And Libra is a connective planet and everything. So when we get into Saturn being through the areas of life, this is what's going to create this energy of wanting to gain stability, wanting to even connect with people on an association level or take it to the extreme. Also, adding too much restriction, you know what I'm saying? So like when you're trying to relate, a lot of times people want to, when you're relating to somebody, and this is dealing with Saturn being in Libra, exalted. When you're relating to somebody, a lot of times these people want you to put your own individuality, aka Aries, the first house, to the side, so the situation can be what more relatable. So this is why when people act in their own individuality, this becomes disagreeable, and this creates energy of people clashing. This is why Aries and Libra are naturally opposite energies, because that archetype in life, meaning you can't relate to people because they just can't. There's no way you could try to be fake and phony when you have your own individual personality and you're relating it with people who don't match your personality in any way, shape, or form. So that's what that creates. And I'm just breaking down Saturn as far as the archetype of what it means. So Saturn can go too far into creating restrictions, aka, oh, you can't express yourself too much because we're in a relatable circumstance and everything like that. You could actually kind of think of Saturn being exalted as like we're all trying to like learn in a like balanced way, everyone being on the same page. So don't go expressing yourself just randomly and everything, like trying to create an idea, because we need structure and everything. We need to have structure. We can't have you spitting out your own idea, and then because you're spitting out your own idea, now this foundation and structure doesn't have any foundation right now because you're throwing your idea out and it's not in cahoots with what we're trying to build as structure. Saturn coming together, Libra. And you know what I'm saying? That's not bad, because a lot of times we do need structure. We do need order in a lot of different ways, but it just depends on what we need order in and everything. So anyway, Saturn through the houses. Saturn in the first house. The first house deals with the personality. First house deals with personal issues. First house deals with your first awareness. The first house deals with the way you conduct yourself, as far as like how you deal with the world and everything like that. This is your personality. This is your persona, the mask that you wear. So if you have Saturn in the first house, this is kind of the mask that you wear in a lot of different ways. You take on the role of being very serious. And I have this placement. I have Saturn in the first house. So Saturn in the first house, this is going to create a situation where you have to structure your personal life. You can't really just be, I mean, you can be yourself because you have a Saturn in the first house. That's who you are. You're a very serious person. But that's the thing. Saturn falls in the first house. Mars rules the first house. Venus is debilitated in the first house. The sun is exalted in the first house. And Saturn falls and is at its weakest point in the first house. So when Saturn is in this area of life, it has a hard time trying to put structure into this, because when the first house, it's like you're already a person who deals with the personal issues and everything. You already have a lot of personal things that you have going on in your life. So to try to just gain structure and try to gain relatability when it comes to like the personal realm and everything, you have a hard time doing that, because you're going to have other people saying like, who the fuck are you telling me that I can't be myself in this situation? Why are you trying to add so many boundaries to my personality? This is why Saturn's weak. It doesn't have the authority in this house, because this house, the first house, is the theme and the decorations and all the energies associated with it is Aries energy, cardinal fire energy, Mars energy, exalted sun, solar plexus, willpower energy. So with Saturn being in the first house, when it's in this house, it can't really do what it needs to do because it's in the house of the first house. So the sun and Mars are the ones that make the rules in the first house, not Saturn. Now, if Saturn, aka this is, and I understand this because I have Saturn in the first house. When you understand that Saturn is trying to teach with this placement is that you do have to be, you can be yourself. You can express yourself. You can still be passionate, but you really have to know yourself. Like you have to know points to where you're going to go overboard. You have to know that you may be very unrelatable to people if you express yourself in a certain way. So you really have to learn people when you have Saturn in the first house, because you're learning so much about yourself just by default. You living day by day with Saturn in the first house. You are already a person who is just constantly like taking yourself way too seriously and everything. So you have to kind of go out in the public and understand other people, so that when aka Saturn rules Saturn rules the 11th house, other people, associations, and it's exalted in the 7th house, relationships. So when you got to learn is that you got to learn how to kind of be a people person. This is the kind of individual, because I know this again because I have this placement. When you first grow up in life, you're very serious, you're very reserved. You don't fuck with people. You really don't. And if you do fuck with people, a lot of times the people that you fuck with are way older than you too. I have an older sister, so I would resonate more towards her friends, her male friends and everything like that, who are way older and everything. And then on top of that, when I was in high school, a lot of times I attracted older people who fucked with me just by default, just because I have this placement. This is my personality. First house being in Saturn being in the first house, you already appear to be very serious. So you have to learn how to understand people, so where you're not being too serious, but you are serious enough to where you know how to conduct yourself and you know how to express yourself personally, but you kind of are the person where you have to take yourself more seriously in a lot of different ways. Saturn in the second house. So a lot of times you're valuing your own status, or you value structure, and you have to kind of place boundaries when it comes to money, even in a lot of different ways. This placement prevents you from being very greedy. And if you do play out energies of being a very greedy person, then Saturn is going to take away all that shit from you. Because again, what y'all have to understand is that Saturn is the planet of reaping and sowing. This is why I put the Psi as the thumbnail, because that is what Saturn represents. It represents reaping and sowing, karma in a lot of different ways. So if you appear to be too greedy, and if you play out energies of being too greedy, then Saturn will sweep all that shit from under you. You can think about the story of Job in the Bible and shit like that had everything and had everything taken away from him. When you think of that energy and you think about the archetype of Saturn being in the second house, you're valuing too much of a status and an image to the point where Saturn isn't going to appreciate this, and Saturn's going to take that sign, cut out all that shit from your life when it comes to your values, your resources. Job had all his cattle, his children, his houses. Everything of value to him was destroyed. So, and because you didn't add boundaries and shit like that, and you didn't already appreciate the shit that you already had to begin with when you have Saturn in the second house. When you have Saturn in the third house, you're a person that places boundaries when it comes to your friend group. So you kind of have this energy to where you know the kind of friend that you want, and you're not just going to associate yourself with just any and everybody. Just because a person has a certain vibe doesn't mean that you're going to actually want to fuck with this person, okay? Because when you have Saturn in the third house, this is, again, when you pick if you pick the wrong friends unknowingly and you have the right intentions and everything, Saturn's going to take that side and it's going to cut out them friends from you in either playing out ways very quickly of people backstabbing you, or even like just them playing out certain characteristics and personality types that just do not resonate with you at all, because the first house and the third house create a sextile opportunity. So you're able to see the opportunity of other people's personality playing out in a way to where Saturn's going to show you like, okay, we're showing you what these people are like. Do you still want to fuck with them? So if you continue to fuck with them, that's on you. So Saturn, when you already have the mindset of, you know that these people aren't people that you need to be associated with or even be like friends with, and you still continue to be friends with them, then at that point you're making the choice, and Saturn's going to cut out even more than just the friends in your life, cutting out things way more important to you. So you don't want to fall into that energy. But positive things of Saturn being in the third house is that the third house deals with your local surroundings. And so you could be like the principal of a high school with this placement. You could be the governor of your well, in this case the mayor. You could be a mayor with Saturn in the third house, because that energy of Saturn, conservative energy, structure, foundation, being in the third house, locality, aka the mayor is the representative of the local cities. You see what I'm saying? Saturn in the fourth house. Now, Saturn is debilitated in the fourth house, but not so much as it is in the first house. Saturn in the fourth house is just like, it's a little weaker, and it's just kind of annoyed being in this area, because the fourth house deals with comfort. The fourth house deals with the moon, nurturing energy, caring, the way you react to certain situations in your life. And a lot of times this creates the subconscious patterns that you create, because this is dealing with shit that you've already dealt with in the home, the fourth house. So with Saturn being in the fourth house, you set boundaries within the home. So the reason this is not really a good placement is because, again, the moon is the ruler of the fourth house, and Jupiter is exalted in the fourth house. So a lot of times what's happening in this household is that there's a lot of like nurturing, there's a lot of caring, there's a lot of soft energy and sensitive energy being played out. And with Jupiter being exalted, these are like, Jupiter deals with experiences. So these could be stories in a lot of different ways. This is why in the home, bedtime stories are such an important role in everything like that, for being able to have children enter into their dream in a positive state of being and able to tap into their subconscious. So Jupiter being exalted in the fourth house, there's a lot of caring and cardinal water energy being portrayed through you constantly wanting to shove down your experiences of the things that you care about, or you want to constantly preach the things that you care about, aka the care and energy is part of the fourth house. So with Saturn being here, the Saturn is going to come in and be like, hey, listen, we don't need to be so much into our emotions. We don't need to be so much into thinking like, oh, all we need to do is just talk and like just tell people of the things that we've been through and everything. No, we need to create order and structure into the house. Why the fuck is everything all fucked up in the house? What is going on with the dishes? Why is your room not clean? The moon deals with comfortability. So even though the moon at times is in the house of the home, it may feel whenever it wants to, when it wants to clean the house and shit. But with Saturn being here and being the opposite, it's going to be like, hey, listen, you don't need to be so comfortable. You need to create boundaries within your own comfortability. This is why it's a weaker placement, because the moon doesn't like it when Saturn just comes into the fourth house all uninterrupted and just starts giving out orders and giving out restrictions and shit like that. But at the same time, it's able to create even more strength in the home, because now there is boundaries. So now you can create structure within the home, to where now when the moon follows out this order and structure, then now there's even more comfortability, because now shit's in order. So now you don't have to worry about even cluttered energy because you didn't clean your shit because you got too comfortable. Saturn in the fifth house. Saturn in the fifth house is going to represent placing boundaries on creative expressions and creative endeavors. And, if you have a lot of children too, because children are, manifestations, you create children. So this deals with the house of creativity. So when you have Saturn in the fifth house, you may either have a lot of children, or if you do have a child just in general, you're very serious with them. What the fuck? A fucking horsefly is in this bitch. So you create like structure with children. You may be a daycare counselor of some sort and everything. You may create your own school even because of that energy. But when it comes to Saturn in the 5th house, your creative endeavors is somewhat blocked, and you have to create boundaries. And you can't just create shit just off of a whim. You have your expressions and your songs and your movies and your paintings or whatever have to have some sort of formula and some sort of blueprint. Like you can't just, okay, I'm not bragging or anything like that, but I have the moon in the 5th house and I have the moon in Cancer. So that creates an energy to where the Lord of my 5th house, which is the moon, because Cancer is in the 5th house. The 5th house Lord is in the 5th house. So, and it's the moon, which is a powerful chakra of our solar system and everything. And I'm not bragging, but what I'm saying is that I do have more of an ability to kind of jump into a creative expression. Like, for example, like this bass and shit like that. I could just go. And although that's not perfect, it still had funky rhythm and it still was like very spontaneous, but it still was able to be created to a point to where it was like cohesive and everything. But when you have house lords in your houses, or when you have a house lord ruler in the house that it rules, you have a responsibility. Like if I didn't practice every single day of guitar and bass, then there would be no way I could do that shit as comfortably as I did. But when you have Saturn in the 5th house, you can still do this shit, but it may not, but it's still going to kind of be all over the place. You have to really like have structure all the time. But the thing is with debilitated planets, when you harness that energy enough and you master Saturn being in the 5th house enough, that shit that I just did, you could do it way better than the fuck I did. Because when you have a house lord in a house, when you have, like, for example, 5th house lord and 5th house, you are good at the shit, but you become a little too lazy and shit like that, and be like, you never feel like you have to practice or anything. Whereas Saturn in the 5th house is constantly practicing their craft of bass or guitar or singing or rapping or playing the harp or painting or movie directing or any kind of shit like that. When you have Saturn in the 5th house, when you learn to organize that shit way better, then you're going to be the master of that shit. Last but not least, and then if there's anybody that wants to chop it up in the comments to whoever's watching and wants to ask a question or whatever, then we can do that shit. Saturn in the 6th house, having a structured routine and being disciplined to get shit done. So what happens is that Saturn being in the 6th house is going to create order when it comes to work. And what may happen is that if you work a regular job, then with Saturn being in the 6th house, it kind of, you know how to structure your week to the way that you want it to. And the job that you manifest, because you have this energy, they're going to sense that from you because it deals with work, the work area place. So when you're dealing with the area of life that deals with work and structure, or I mean, routine and structure, I mean, work and routine, it's going to create an energy to where they're going to see the Saturn energy come out of you because you're very serious. Saturn deal with serious energy, structure. They're going to see you're very serious, and then they're not going to see like, oh, this person just wants these days off because they're lazy or whatever. They're going to see like, oh, he's bad as shit. They work really hard, and they have a good sufficient reason why they need these days off. Okay, your schedule, aka 6th house, is structured. Saturn. That's an archetype of that. And then you're just very serious about getting your shit done. With this kind of energy, this is like I got 6 jobs, I don't get tired, Kevin Gates kind of energy with Saturn being in the 6th house. You could be a person that you have multiple different hats that you wear. Go clock in at one job one night, clock out, go to your night job or shit like that. And then go to your other job that you were off on the next day, and then go into that job the next day. So you're constantly, Saturn in the 6th house, you could be making money like a motherfucker and everything. But okay, yeah, that's really it when it comes to Saturn through the houses and everything. As far as part 1, we'll get into part 2 a little later. That might not be a live stream. This is just kind of like an experimentation and everything. But I see there's 2 people in here. I don't know who's watching, but if you have a question that you want to ask me or whatever, feel free to. If not, I'm going to just like kind of just talk a little more, just talk a little bit about how to manifest a little more and everything, and then cut this off and everything. Nancy Lambert, what's going down? Saturn in Sag and in the 4th house. So Saturn being in Sagittarius, my father actually has this placement, so I can break this down to you. When you have Saturn in Sagittarius, the way that you see reality and the way that you structure your life is through the lens of mutable fire, which is Sagittarius. So the temperament of Sagittarius, again, is mutable fire. So fire dealing with expression, dealing with creativity, dealing with vision, dealing with artistic expressions too, when we're dealing with the Leo aspect. But just fire in general is a creative expression. Mutable. This modality of fire is going to be like you can see multiple people's perspectives and visions and creativity. This is where you get the wise Jupiterian energy, because they say a wise man or woman knows nothing, because there's so much to learn. There's so much mutable fire to learn and everything. So actually, that's how you see reality. The way you see reality is sometimes I just don't know shit, but I need to learn more and everything like that. And then you have it in the fourth house. When you have Sagittarius in the fourth house in general, you're a person where you love to experience different levels of comfortability, and you love to experiment with not experiment, but you like to experience, comfortability at all times and everything. And you can see other people's ways, and you are able to understand other people's ways of how they gain comfortability too, and how they deal with privacy. So when you have Saturn, so if you have Sagittarius in the fourth house, then that means that you're a Virgo rising. So when you have Virgo rising, that's the kind of personality that you are. You're a very analytical person and everything like that. So that's something you like to analyze too, the way that other people do shit in their home and everything like that. And then Jupiter is exalted in the fourth house, and Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So these energies are kind of like, correlating in a lot of different ways. So there's actually probably some sort of like over exhaustion energy playing out with this placement. And again, now with Saturn being here, this is going to actually put a boundary into this in some way, shape, or form. So with Saturn being in Sagittarius in the fourth house, this is going to be where you understand how other people do shit in the home, but you may have more of the ability to kind of tell people how to structure their home a little more and everything like that. Or, like this get like, and I'm not like saying this is your occupation and everything, or this should be, but like kind of an energy that came to my head is like super nanny or some shit like that, because you're able to see Sagittarius in the fourth house. You're able to see other people's way of how they deal shit in privacy and in domestic issues and shit. And then you take the Saturnian energy, put it into the fourth house, and now you're putting boundaries, and you're like disciplining on a way harder level, not just in a, oh yes, honey, I'll take care of you with the moon and shit like that, but like really like Saturnian energy going on. And like I said, that's just an archetype of what that could represent. So you may be the kind of person to where, like, if someone's child and like if you have a friend who has a child and you go over to their house, you may have more of a blueprint, aka Saturn, on how to tell people how to better deal with their children and everything like that. And don't worry if people be like, you can't tell me how to take care of my children or whatever like that. You just know that you have this energy, and that you may even play out energies where these people be like, oh, hey, you were actually right and everything like that. So yeah, Saturn, Sagittarius in the fourth house. That's basically what that would represent. So again, I don't really see anybody in here, so I'm really going to go ahead and end this video and everything like that. I just wanted to go ahead and go live. This is definitely something I'm going to have to get my chops up and get used to, because I'm not really used to going this long and everything, but I know I can do it. And I know I have the knowledge, and I know I have the ability to teach and have the shit make sense and everything like that. So I'm an Aquarius sun. I appreciate your videos. I get your speak. Hey, I'm an Aquarius sun too. So listen, I also consider myself the spokesman of the Archangel Raphael, because Archangel Raphael is my partner, Latrice. She has a YouTube channel too. I should pin this in the next video and everything like that. So I feel like I got a responsibility on my shoulders in a lot of different ways too, and everything. There's a lot of positive information and everything like that. So at the same time, we just gotta come together and everything like that, and we gotta really express ourselves in our own individual ways and everything like that. Pin the video. Yeah, I'll go ahead and try to work that out and everything. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end this shit. To anybody else who's watching, I appreciate you for checking this out, and we'll get with you later. All right. Yeah, I gotta get used to this. All right, peace out, y'all.